Episode 22. Please stay. He laughed. Half of those are going with me, he said as he ripped it open and pulled some out. I helped him load the things he'd need to cook dinner into my wagon, and he left with it. I locked the fence behind him and crawled into bed. I didn't wake until it was late. I could hear everyone talking around the fire. Literally everyone. All gathered to get the story. I knew they were talking about me, but I couldn't make a word of it out. It made me sick. I lay there awake for an hour, and the voices faded into one. Then silence. After a while, I heard a low whisper from outside. V, he said. Yeah? I said back. You're awake? He asked. I came to the door. Can you sleep? Ray asked. I did for a while, I replied. Do you want to sleep at my house? Ray asked. It's probably going to feel weird being alone now that it's quiet. I thought about it for a minute, then just nodded, feeling like an 8-year-old. I went in, grabbed some blankets, and came back out, locking my gate behind me. I followed Ray to his house, and he led me in. I went to make a pile in the corner like I had those first few weeks when I lived with him. V, he said, come sleep by me. You'll sleep better knowing someone is right there. I looked at him, a little too humbled to argue. Just don't rape me, I said. He laughed. I stepped into his bed and lay close to the wall. After an awkward moment, he spoke. Jackson found out where the guy lived, Ray said into the dark. I didn't say anything. He didn't want to ruin the surprise, but it sounds like you hooked yourself a pretty big fish. I hadn't thought of that. I would be entitled to his property. I feel like that should excite me, but I can't quite get there. I finally said, I'm happy where I'm at. There will be things to trade regardless. You'll need to claim it fast. Us guys can go if you're not up to it tomorrow, he replied. No, I can go with you. I just can't make myself be happy or curious right now, I said. It might get violent if there's anyone wanting it for themselves. It's okay to let us go, he said. I laughed loudly. Ray, of all of us, I'm the only one with a kill under my belt. You do realize that. He laughed back. Well, we can get Ivan to go. He was military. Let's get some sleep, he said, stiffly gripping my shoulder in a way that solidified the platonic boundaries I already knew were there, before rolling over. For as many times as I'd imagined sleeping beside him in the past, this time I lay there awake, thinking about the day. My heart raced as I replayed the incidents. Ray drifted into sleep. I felt myself begin to drift, but every time Ray moved, it woke me. I lay there awake until I couldn't anymore. Then I got up, got my things, and went to leave. Ray got up, and after trying to convince me not to, he let me out. He offered to walk me back, and I insisted he didn't need to, holding up my gun. I walked back up the way with my wad of blankets. Coming around the corner, I saw a familiar lump of blankets at my fence. I looked at it for a few moments. It didn't take long to realize Denny was sleeping there. I knew why, but it still took a minute to separate him from the events of this morning. I remembered both the powerlessness and the rage I had thinking he would do that to me. I remembered the moment I hesitated to turn the light on, too afraid to see him dying. Even though it wasn't him, there was still some part of me that was ashamed of myself. Wondered if I'd called Marty into existence for daring to think optimistically about a future with someone for even a moment. This was a very complicated cocktail of emotions, especially for someone like me who missed the day in kindergarten when we learned to identify them. I looked at him a minute longer and realized I was glad he was here. I was glad he was alive. I was glad he didn't do that to me. I knelt down. What are you doing here? I asked, putting my hand on his shoulder. Denny shot up. He mumbled, trying to wake up. I let myself fall to sit in front of him, pulling a blanket around myself. Wait, you aren't in there? He let out in surprise. I paused, wondering how to explain this. After you guys finished dinner, Ray offered to let me sleep over, I replied. Oh, wow, he said, going to gather his blankets up to leave. I could feel his embarrassment. It's really not like that, I said with a nervous laugh. He was still embarrassed and trying to leave. Denny, I said, please stay. Episode 23, Denny the Fencesitter. He stopped. Are you okay, V? At that moment, I was more hurt that he didn't call me VV. I studied him for a second. These things happen, I finally said. We sat there quietly for what seemed like a few minutes. I felt myself wanting the version of him from the night before, when he tried to tuck me into bed, but he wasn't that guy right now. Thank you for all the supplies. The shirts were nicer than I expected, he said awkwardly. I nodded. I'd forgotten about that. How did I forget about that? I wondered. That was the whole point of the day. But I suppose not the biggest part of it. I mean, really, I was surprised. You grabbed some things nicer than I would get myself. The dishes seem sturdy too. I love the metal camping cup. And 4 blankets. I know I owe you more money, he rambled on. No, the transaction's done. I charge based on inconvenience, and today things came to us very easily. It would be a shame to leave good free stuff behind when I know you could use it, I replied. Denny smiled. I could only make out the white of his teeth and the curve of his mouth in the dark. So what is up with that weight bar? He asked. I laughed. I thought it looked cool and could do some damage. I assume Ray told you about it? He chuckled. Yeah, I was swinging it around at dinner. It's actually got a nice feel. Just have to hold the bar tight. Jackson slipped while swinging and it landed by the fire. Ray wasn't happy. I smiled. Then it fell quiet for a few long moments as I stared down at the ground. So Jackson tracked down where the guy lived. He was talking about it at dinner. He wouldn't tell us anything, but he said you're going to be very happy, Denny continued. I dragged my finger through the dirt and laughed. Ray told me a little about it. It would be cool to recover some more useful items, I replied. Kind of like treasure hunting, I suppose. So how does that work? You kill someone and get their homestead, he asked. If you kill someone in self-defense, you have a claim to their property, I replied. What if they have family here, he asked. Nope, no inheritance claim if they're killed like that, I replied. I mean, he may have a girlfriend or wife there, or a relative that wants to make a claim. But if they do, I have every right to kill them too for being on my property, and no one would blame me. So you'll kick them out if they're in there? He followed up. I guess I'll have to see it. I'm owed whatever I want. But I really like it here. Unless it's very close by, I don't want to move. I trust everyone here, and I love dinners at night and doing our runs for everyone. I don't want to be away from this, I followed up. But what if it's like a DeReg mansion? He laughed. I laughed. I kind of hope it's not. The choice would be harder. I stared at the ground in front of me for a while. I think I did this too long because it got awkward. I could sense Denny struggling to say something, or struggling not to. Ray told us not to ask you a bunch of questions, not to talk about it unless you brought it up. But I don't know what else to say to you right now, he finally said. I nodded, then asked, what did Ray tell you guys? Not a lot. When you got back, he told me not to speak and get my stuff, and that he'd explain later, Denny replied. I nodded. That made sense. I felt really odd looking through all the items. It was like Christmas, but also this guilty feeling knowing you were over here feeling whatever you were feeling, he continued. I nodded again. I'm glad you enjoyed them. I'd heard about it before that. When I came earlier in the day, I was going to see if I could help anyone for money. Dave told me about the screams and the gunshot. I actually heard the gunshot. I didn't know it was you, but it's all anyone was talking about today. What were they saying? I asked. I got up and moved to sit beside him against the fence. They mostly talked about the screams and how it woke them, and they didn't know what was happening. Carol saw Ray jump the fence, he paused. I bent your fence back for you. I chuckled. You're getting good at that. But they also talked about you guys dragging a man out, and there's blood everywhere. At dinner, Ray told everyone a guy broke in and you killed him. Dave made some comment that it was lucky Ray came when he did. Ray laughed and said he showed up just in time to help clean up. That you kicked his ass, he said, smiling at me. I'd seen Ray make excuses for me before, but it was in this moment that I realized how strategic he was in making it go away. He answered enough for them to be satisfied and didn't give any of the juicy details that people would gossip about. The gun did most of the work, I said, holding it up to give it full respect. Did he hurt you? He asked. Ray insisted the guy was trying to rob you, but it sounded more like, no, I replied, but he did try. God damn it, I want to beat that man's ass, he said, frustrated. I beat you to it, I laughed. I kicked his ass, dragged him to the town square, and continued beating his ass. He didn't die when you shot him? He asked, piecing it together. I realized I outed myself with that joke. I don't want to talk about this with everyone. I'm sorry, I'll stop, he interrupted. No, I'll tell you. I just don't want to have to retell it for every nosy person, I replied. He nodded. I shot him in the lung. He was struggling for air, but not dead. Denny looked at me with his eyes wide. I kicked him in the balls several times and punched him. I stopped before telling him about carving into his forehead. I didn't want him to think I was crazy. You made him miserable, he laughed. Ray and I dragged him out onto a main road. He was still breathing when we left him there, but turning purple. I punched him a few more times, and Ray kicked him so hard in the side, I heard ribs crack. His demeanor changed, and I sensed Ray's involvement made him feel like an outsider. I mean, he is, but it seemed inappropriate to rub it in as he sat outside my fence, trying to be there for me. It's weird, but that makes me feel a lot better, he replied finally. How are you dealing with it? Is the image haunting you, or is it hard to be at your home now? I do keep seeing his face, but it makes me angry, not scared. I'm just so angry. I slept well when you guys were eating dinner. It felt safe because everyone was out here. But I honestly don't know how I'll feel in the early morning when I'm alone, I replied. I'll stay out here if you'll let me. He had been sitting, leaning back against the fence, looking at the sky. He turned to look at me. I wouldn't want to put you out. It's okay, I said. Almost annoyed, he replied, Are you serious? It had the weight of someone who felt they owed everything. But I didn't know what he meant by it, too consumed in my own perception to see through his. We sat there quietly. My mind started to spiral. Did I feel helpless or confused or angry or sad or lonely? Everything I'd built here now seemed so temporary. In some parallel universe, a different version of me didn't make it to this moment. She died thinking it was Denny. Maybe she was who I was mourning right now. I only survived because he let my arms free, because I sleep with a gun by my bed. I was powerless until that point. I felt a tear run down my face on the side he couldn't see. I let it fall. I felt mad at myself because I didn't know why I'd started to cry. Denny's arm came around me, and that's when I realized how rigid I'd become. He pulled me in close with both arms. I let myself fall into his lap, curling my leg in. He tried to prop my head up with some blanket and his arm. I lay there still thinking about it all, staring forward, thinking about what led that man to my door, and if more were coming. In my last memories of Wake, I felt Denny's hand go limp on my shoulder, then fall down my back. He fell asleep, and I soon followed.